Morning, listening to the keynote address and what Deepak Pental, Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, when he mentioned, and I think we all agree with him, when he said he's got a lot of distance learning students, and he feels a little odd because they come register at the beginning of a semester, don't show the face, and he has a question mark when they pass out of the examination. I think that's pretty valid embarrassment for anyone who heads an institution. And that is why I think the team of panelists here can address some of it, because it's very valid. And I keep telling a lot of people, who come into the system today, that actually this avatar has changed. We're talking of correspondence courses once, and today with the advent of technology and how prevalent it is, we moved on to what is called distance education. So it's actually the School of Correspondence Courses that has now got rechristened as the Directorate of Distance Education in most, and technology is the in thing in those days. Needless to say, there have been speakers before this, they've been speaking of that paradigm shift from teacher-centric environment to a learner-centric environment, and I think it's much more evident and prevalent as far as distance education is concerned. There is this syndrome about Bharat versus India when you talk of distance education and say, yes, there is a paucity of qualified teachers, so that's a challenge. How do you scale up the campus operations? So that's another challenge. How do you go to the different nooks and corners of the country? And lastly, infrastructure. All right, if you really look at these 4 pegs, I think with a lot of time, effort, you can probably answer 3 of them. But quality of teachers is something that is a challenge even in the urban-centric environment. And therefore, I think technology being pervasive is highly important for distance education if you need to take gross enrollment, because gross enrollment is going up. There's no second thoughts on that. May not be to the percentage as explained today morning. But the fact is that even if it has to go up by an iota, that even that 1% increase, which is not really satisfying, is still a challenge because you have a paucity of teachers. In that context, I think my colleagues on the dais, I would go in the same order as is put in the agenda, because it looks a very logical order, and I should applaud the organizers for that. And therefore, I'd like to ask Mr. Ghosh to speak a few words.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts on this very crucial topic of democratization of dissemination of education through the distance mode. It has been said very clearly that it is a learner-centric mode, and rather than distance mode, if we use the term open and distance learning, where open learning is a philosophy, a way of life, and we try to inculcate openness in teaching learning transactions, whereas distance education is a methodology. And in this methodology, the teacher is absent, but still he is omnipresent. He is omnipresent through the print mode, and I'm always talking about the print mode because this happens to be the mainstay in our country. And of course, the technological modes, which has evolved through the audio, video, interactive video via satellite, and ultimately the virtual classroom mode via ICT. So I'll stress on the topic of democratization. Now, we want to increase the outreach of education. That is, we want to take the quality teacher to the far reaches, where education has not reached, where educational opportunities have not reached. So, as was mentioned by Professor Bakshi, that the television camera is not going to enhance my teaching competence. But what the television camera will be able to do, will be able to take a professor like Professor Amartya Sen to the far reaches of the country. So we have to sensitize people first about dissemination of education via technology. See, when we say that there is a new technology of a television, maybe we will go for a buyback scheme, throw away the current television we'll be having and buying the new plasma television. There is a new washing machine, we'll go for that. But when we say technology for education, there is some hesitation. If you ask the professor of economics that you didn't listen to that satellite-based talk given by Professor Amartya Sen, it was available on your television. Oh, that day some guests had come to my home. Now, guests would be coming also during the T20 match, but he will be tuning in the television, but he will be hesitant to do that when some educational theme is going on through that particular mode. So first we have to sensitize people that technology can be used for education. Now, one problem which I envisage and I have seen over in IGNOU is the digital divide. To be sure about the availability of infrastructure, even if you equip some rural sector with computer, internet and so on, well, there can be problem of bandwidth. And here I emphasize on satellite-based education. And I have practiced it. I'm not saying it just like that. Because, see, if the dish can see the satellite, then the signals will be beaming down to the dish and it would be able to receive whatever is being disseminated through that particular mode. Now, you are aware of the Electronic Media Production Center in IGNOU, which also handles one of the channels of EduSat. But you might not be knowing that out of the 72 channels of EduSat, there is one educational hub at Jabalpur, which is doing a very humble job. It is handling a project called Rajiv Gandhi Project for EduSat supported elementary education. And through that hub, elementary education is being disseminated to the schools in the villages of Madhya Pradesh and the fringe areas in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, so on and so forth. And the medium of instruction is only Hindi. So that somehow compensates for the absence of teachers. Say in a primary school there is only one teacher. So that somehow compensates for the absence of teacher, and during the vacation it is used for providing training purposes. So we have to depend on such kind of a system, and for power failure, problems related to power failure, we use solar power backups. So this is one way by way of which you can democratize education. I'm not talking too much about quality. I believe my other colleagues on the dais will be talking about that. But one important issue which is always related to this democratization, and people feel hesitant about joining a distance education program, is the issue of recognition. I joined IGNOU about 21 years back, and ever since I am in the system, well, this question is being asked. Of course, these days, the intensity of this question that are your degrees, diplomas recognized, the intensity of this question has got lessened, but still it is asked. You will find some organization advertising that distance education students should not apply. Now, why this discrepancy? Why this discrimination? So we have to give them the common kind of platform. And our students also, they depend more on the paper document, that are your degrees recognized by UGC, AICTE, so on and so forth. They're more worried about that. I'll make an appeal to all of you that whenever you interact, whenever you confront that kind of a question, please try to inspire the student by saying that you have to perform. I'll give an analogy, maybe a little crude. Well, a few months back, India was playing Bangladesh. And then a few days later, we were playing South Africa. We are all busy persons, but those who keep interest in cricket were still interested to know that how India was performing against South Africa. Not so much interested about how India was performing against Bangladesh. Why so? Because they knew that South Africa can perform and they can outperform India. But both are recognized by ICC. Both have that paper document that we are recognized by International Cricket Council. But we are more worried about South Africa because we knew that they can perform. So we have to tell our students to perform. Some newspaper will publish that PhD through distance mode is not recognized. Well, I remember I'd like to recall the situation when Professor S.N. Bose had written to Professor Einstein about the Bose statistics. And he had written through mere, which we call today snail mail. Email was not known during those days. And then Professor Einstein wrote back to him. He was enthralled by the calculation made by Professor Bose, and he made some kind of a modification and then said that this is a phenomenal theory. And you might be knowing that a couple of years back, the two Nobel laureates in physics has identified in the laboratory the Bose-Einstein condensate, which also gives the practical proof of Bose-Einstein statistics. Now, if Professor Bose had published a thesis on the basis of that interaction, well, that poor newspaper would have said that it is not recognized. So we have to ask the students to perform, and only by way of their performance, they can establish their credibility, the credibility of their institution. I'll make another remark about audio, because with video and so much of ICT, well, audio takes a backseat. My only contention is that, again, related with the issue of democratization, that audio is simple, it is easy to prepare. Of course, it has the limitation that visual signals cannot be sent. But through audio, well, say you can deliver an audio talk, 5 to 6 minutes, which would reinforce the contents which you have done in the classroom situation. You can do quizzes, you can have panel discussions through audio also. You can have dramatization. Say you dramatize the dialogue between Swami Vivekananda and Sister Nivedita. That would be a phenomenal lesson on Indology. And if you also transmit the audio signals via EduSat, then at the receiving stations, that is the ROTs, receive only terminal or the satellite interactive terminal, if you join it with an FM station, you also increase the outreach by another 80 odd kilometers. So we can definitely try, at least with audio. I'll request all the participants here to inspire the teachers in the schools that they can prepare small audio snippets, and that would definitely help in providing quality education for the masses. I'll just conclude by quoting Sir Arthur Eddington. You might be knowing that he was a phenomenal nuclear physicist turned astrophysicist turned philosopher, a friend, philosopher, and guide to Professor Einstein. He used to say that we think that when we have known everything about one within quotes, then we know all about two within quotes, because two is one and one. Now, mathematically or arithmetically, 2 is 1 plus 1, which this plus here is replaced by and. And this talks about the synergy. And this dissemination of quality education through the distance mode needs a lot of teamwork, which we have experienced in IGNOU. That is, we may be sitting at the headquarters, about 300 odd faculty members, but we have faculty members spread all across the country who are part-timers, but they are very much ours. Like the other members of staff who are helping in production, who are helping in the print production. They are also a member of the team, and this teamwork should be inculcated because for the dissemination of quality education, and let all our journey in trying to disseminate higher education, higher quality education through the distance mode be a study in defining and between one and one, so vividly portrayed by Sir Arthur Eddington. Thank you very much for giving me a patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. You couldn't have got better inputs from a person who's spent a lot of time in distance education representing IGNOU. And two very key points that he touched upon was one was on the recognition, and he answered some of it, right, as to how to go about that, the challenges that are being faced, and that on the other hand is also on a digital divide. I think the fact that it's not being recognized is a challenge, and it is up to a lot of other stakeholders to ensure that that challenge gets surfaced. It's also to get industry to participate, something that one of our keynote addresses this morning partially touched upon that topic. I think that's the way to go about that. I ultimately presume the proof of the pudding is in getting a job, though the last two speakers of this session will touch upon that. At the end of it, if the student can, as he rightly said, perform, which means if he can be much more competent in the job that he's already doing, or he can get himself a better job from the competency that he holds, courtesy the course that he's gone through, answers that question. And therefore, then I think recognition will not be that much of a challenge from an employer's point of view. From a digital divide, I'll keep that for the last. I think more than digital divide, we are slowly engrossing ourselves into what I personally feel is an aspirational divide. Now that today I think digital divide is becoming a thing of the past, and it's aspirational divide that is going to become a challenge. I will move on now to request Sharath Kumar to speak to you, a man who comes with a lot of experience from different sectors, from the defense onto to the corporate, and corporate onto the education space.
Thank you. It's been a very good opportunity for me to share a few things about what we did in IMT and what I learned and what I contributed. I wish I had a little more time, but I've just been told that I should restrict myself because of the limited time. What attracted me to this conference was some statement which said educational leadership teams that are creative and who also put technology to maximum strategic advantage among the winners. And building agility may be crucial to leadership capacity for change. The words which appeal to me most are creative and agility. I got into IMT by accident. There was an entrepreneur who had bought land, created some buildings, and it was running at a regional small level. And he asked me if I would accept the challenge to do something with it. Said, I cannot give you any more money. So when I went there, we had a revenue income of 2.5 crores, which just about met its expenses. But we had some land and a group of teachers who were of medium quality because we could not afford to pay the salaries which good teachers demanded and required. From that low point in mid-1985, IMT today is a large institution. We got no money from anywhere else. And I thought the only resource I could count on was the teachers. We went about enthusing them because they became a sort of a think tank. We enabled them to think, and I went along with them, and I said, I will be in it with you. I earned their respect by writing about management subjects, eventually wrote a book called Mind Your Management, which won the Best Book of the Year award. So I had no problems of getting confidence with them. Today, IMT can afford the best of technology. It has campuses, Wi-Fi campuses in 4 areas, including Dubai. But when we look back, what contributed to it? I often remember one of the eminent professors who I managed to rope in was Professor N.K. Oberoi. After extensive teaching abroad and with Delhi University and with a doctorate from Harvard, he once mentioned to me, teachers are delicate creatures. They have to be handled, motivated. Otherwise, a teacher turns into, if I may use his exact words without adding my name to it, he said, teachers turn into teachers and eventually furniture. So you have to keep them moving. It's also a question which came to my mind was, you can write endless number of books, compliment yourself on great discourses which you're doing. All that will not lead you to build a distance learning program, which was one of the major things which we did, not only for improving the lot of our teachers, giving them better salaries, but also for building resources for the institution. From a level of 250 students, within a few years, we built them up to 12,000, and now the figure is double that amount. What I went to the root was the matter was, why do people do anything? We raised this question of education. Why do we do anything is primarily because what we think will improve our life will give us a sense of contentment and satisfaction. On this standard, education is not something external to life, it is life itself. And it is a question of inculcating an attitude, which means that you have to be open to learning. This is the major input which good education in the safe environment of early years, when you are still struggling to find your bearings in life, is that you must have an inclination and attitude to learn always. I went to deliver a lecture in one of the management institutions. The 1/3 were girls and 2/3 were boys. And I found they were not very interested. I said, why is this fellow coming and giving lecture when we should be preparing for our placements? That's what they interested them most. I thought I needed to wake them up. So I said, human mind is a peculiar animal. We define it in various ways. But the fact is, we can define and predict the behavior of animals by their physical shape. A dog has 4 legs, a mouth of a certain kind, and 2 ears. So you know that if you whistle, it'll wag its tail. You go close to a tiger, you recognize tigers by the shape and the stripes. You go close to it, it'll eat you up. But you cannot do the same with human beings. All human beings have similar shapes. And to wake up the audience, I said, all young girls look very beautiful until they open their mouth. And then girls got very angry, but the boys started clapping. So I said, I apologize sincerely. My object was only to wake you up. But the truth is, human beings their behavior can be predicted only depending on the quality of their mind. So improving the quality of the mind is the most important aspect of education. Even technology is created by the quality of mind. It is chosen by your own mind. It is implemented to a purpose by your own mind. So it's these factors which are crucial. When you build up institutions through people. It's human beings which create everything. Everything in the world, be it Taj Mahal, be it an institution, be it technology, is created by human imagination and human spirit. So these words, agility and creativity, are very crucial and most important part of education, and should not only be applicable to teachers, but also an attitude to be inculcated in the students. When we had resources, I once decided that we must put video cameras in all classrooms. And I spoke to teachers. I said, my friends, I'm putting this up because with our Wi-Fi campuses, now we can have your lectures recorded, and a student who's missed the lecture can go back to it in the evening and listen to it. And then I said, second part, if I may be blunt enough to say, please go back and see the lecture yourself. Take a recording, see it at night in the evening. And then I said, but be sure that you have address of a doctor close by, because you might just faint. So it's a question of self-analysis is very important, and it's a constant process of growth for everyone. I think I've run out of my time. I have huge things which I could share with you, because building up an institution is a very interesting task. It's the lowest paid job I did in my career, but the most enjoyable, which I still think I must continue, and I propose writing a book on different aspects of education other than what is put in standard classrooms, because those are the things which bring happiness and give meaning to life. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Thomas. I think a very interesting facet that came out with also brought in some humor is how we motivated, how one needs to motivate the teacher on an ongoing basis, and they don't become the teacher for teacher joke. Just to take it on a similar line and put some humor to keep the hungry stomach at bay is, if the teachers are not motivated, there was a saying that went something like this. Colleges become institutions more of as of detention rather than one that they should be of attention. And another one that goes is also, if teachers are not motivated and teach well, then schools become tools for fools. Okay, so I think these are very interesting things. I'd like now Dr. Sunita Raj to give her views on this session subject.
Afternoon to you all, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to share our experience in terms of imparting a quality education, which is a management program by IAFT, wherein we have combined both the distance education mode as well as the conventional classroom mode. I go about it in three parts. The first thing is that to ask a question as to why we had thought about this program. Increasingly, our programs were being sought by executives who were off the Delhi campus, so we had to provide access to our programs. So, which is what made us look into different options that are available for us. And the second one is that in terms of the constraints that we had at the campus, in terms of the infrastructural constraints. And the third one we had was that where the executives are traveling most of the time, and they should have the convenience to take the classes as and when and where they want to do that. So while putting all these three together, we brought in something called a blended learning approach, where we combined both the classroom as well as what we call the distance education, not correspondence. And what we have done in this is that in terms of the delivery of the program, we have partnered with two major institutions. One is Hughes HCIL, and the other one is NIIT. We use their VSAT technology to deliver our lectures on a continuous basis. And then to support our lectures, where the contact between the faculty and the participants are established on a continuous basis, we use all the methods that we use in our conventional teaching classroom mode, which is we have the presentations by the students, we have the case discussions that happen on the platform, and everything is exactly a virtual thing that we do it in the classroom. And to support this kind of exercise, wherein the participant, although placed in different parts of the country, is in constant touch with the faculty, we have a very elaborate, detailed and structured course content. We prepare the courses in terms of the session-wise. We prepare it ourselves in terms of the contents, where the faculty explains the concepts and the participant is expected to read and come to the class. So we have something called a pre-work, where before the class takes place, it's uploaded on a website, which is exclusively for this program. The participants access that, look through the content, come down to the class. It could be a case analysis, it could be some kind of an article review, or any kind of a method which the faculty thinks is most appropriate for that particular class. And then we have the discussion in the class. Then after the class gets over, the concepts that have been done in the class are explained, and then with certain types of exercises that go along. This is done every year. We revise the content, we make changes on the basis of the experience that we get in the classroom kind of discussion, and we upload the material. That's one part of it. And then we also have certain kinds of other readings that get uploaded on a continuous basis, which the student is access to. Of course, this access is given through a password and all that, so, and then the participant gets to widen his perspective. Apart from this kind of a support that we give, and we also take care in terms of the admission, we also take care in terms of the evaluation. The evaluation we see as an integral part of our teaching, and we plan for the evaluation. Any courses, every course we plan the evaluation in such a way that we have online quiz conducted, mainly to check on the understanding of the concepts. If we find that the participants have not done well in a particular quiz, we redo that class again, explain the concepts again, and ensure that what we had intended gets across to the participants. That's the objective of the quiz that we do. Besides that, we do have group exercises, assignments, etc., which gets uploaded onto the web portal that we have it, and then the faculty will review it and get back with their comments. So it goes on a continuous basis. And then the term and examination is a book, pen, paper method that we use. We have engaged this organization to conduct the term and examinations for our participants at different locations. We get the answer scripts, we look through that, evaluate, get back our feedback to the participants. And the admission also is quite intensive. Complete application details are sought from the participants. We ensure that the participants are able to take in the pressure and the load that we offer, and only if we are convinced on that, we offer them application. So we do get a large number of applications, but we take in only a few as participants. Our only objective is to ensure that the quality that we offer on campus is maintained through this mode, and I'm extremely happy to say that we've been very successful, because our participants have been placed very high across their organizations, and they have been accepted as they are, and we don't offer placements at all, and we tell them right at the beginning, but they do come, and on their own, they get higher opportunities to move up onto their organizations or other organizations. And we believe that it is purely because of the emphasis that we put on imparting quality education, and we take care, very minute details are looked into, planned, and in terms of the delivery, also we plan for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Sunita Raju, for expounding the cause. I think, like two sides of a coin, everything has a pull and a push effect. And therefore, she spoke about how the pull would get the job. But now we'll go across and listen to the last two speakers, who I think it's very important from a distance education perspective. When you connect with students right across the geography, it is very important that the placement, which is the final nail in the coffin, is a very important facet in the operation to ensure you can have the best of technology, you can have the best of products, but it's also important for the industries to endorse, and therefore placement plays a very important part. And we'll listen to both of them. I'll start with Dr. Seema.
Thank you, Dr. Thimaiya, and good afternoon, all of you. For me, I am, of course, a researcher. I am representing Delhi University. Since morning, you've been hearing about a university. Professor Pentil talked about the largeness or the hugeness or whatever you want to call it. Why I'm using S? Because we have 4 lakh odd students who are there. We have every day, in case if nowadays examinations are going on, we have, around 60,000 students participating in examination every day. And this will continue for 3 odd months. But I'm here only talking about as a researcher who's been doing about the quality education and in higher education. For me, since morning, I've been slightly confused and perturbed. Why? Because for me, higher education is just not alone digital learning. It's not alone teaching in the classroom. Higher education is much more than that. Higher education for me starts right from admissions. And I would like to say that I'm very happy that now in Delhi University, of course, right now it's not visible, but we are going to have SLCM, that is Student Life Cycle Management System, which will be there. Right now, we are not taking care of the financial part and not even administrative part. So, of course, we recognize in Delhi University that higher education has 3 important pillars. Students, teachers. I have slight reservation in case of when people talk about teachers as for teachers or whatever. I again, even using it lightly, I will always say that it is not that, in case if you're having digital learning, then all those teachers, the ones who are teaching in the classroom, maybe traditional methods, may be an excellent teacher. Why do we always think that only is the digital mode, in case it will give them all those flash or will use Adobe or will use all those things, technology, then only your teacher will become an excellent teacher. We have all those cases of Ramanujan and all those other cases when the teachers were excellent without using technology also. And of course, the third pillar is administration. I am not going to talk in this small time about the detail, how to go about the quality education in higher education. But of course, I always say there are 3 levels of keywords, and the first level of the keyword is headquarter. And headquarter, I always say, is higher education and quality education. I'm only going to raise few questions, and then we'll wish that you can ponder over them. One of them is that, what are we trying to do in higher education? What is the purpose that why we are wanting higher education or digital learning in higher education? We are wanting this to be there so that our students become much more knowledgeable, and our students, the ones who are there, in the days to come, in all other countries, we are not going to have students who will run this global society, because this generation, younger generation, is just not there. We want to give them a global knowledge. But again, that doesn't imply that when we want to give them a global knowledge, we only would make them heartless people. As somebody in Delhi University, I'll say that we also have students who are very diverse. When I say students who are diverse, what I mean by this, when we are preparing anything, we also have students who are physically challenged. They're very different. We also have students who have different needs. They're very different. We also all have to target about that. But the question is that why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? Are we doing it only so that I can make economic gains out of it? A lot of us, the ones who have done, who've talked about it, have always said, someone also, the one who's presenting, said that, IIM and IIT and all these things. Do we only mean that those teachers or those institutions, the moment we say that they are there attached to it, then it becomes the best institution? Do we mean to say that, in case if any course run by IIT in a distance mode or by IIMs would definitely be an excellent course or would be a quality course in higher education? I feel these are the things which we actually need to think about when we are evolving that. And plus, why I'm saying that, because sometimes there are cases, I've been into this research for the last 4 years and I've collected a lot of data. Sometimes we become too casual because we already have a brand. And the ones who do not have a brand are the ones who consciously think about adding all those keywords because they are so conscientious that they want to be the best. And when I talk about the keywords, What I mean by about those keywords, I always call them in again a paraphrase, of course, following 3 A's. That is students, standards, as we are talking about democratization with a larger sphere of influence. But for me, those keywords which I feel, we have to find a conscientious teacher. We have to find a passionate teacher. We have not only to find the ones who are already there, the ones who still have an energy and who want to make a difference. And because that person should also be ready for a peer review. Review is a very important part of a quality education. But in case if I ask, of course I'm not going to ask you to vote, but I've done my own, anyway, we did a small survey and we found that people are not very comfortable when it comes to review taking. In Delhi University also, we all have been talking about the DUTA and all those union always come, please students should not review us. Because we do not want, students to find faults in us. We also all have so many reasons, but review is an important part of quality education. And that's something which we all always have to find out, the different ways of feedbacks, different ways of review, but that doesn't imply, and again, there are 3 levels of those feedbacks when I say that. What I mean by 3 levels of feedback, some institutions, if you do a survey around, you'll find that you're very happy. See, we are doing feedback. What are you doing in a feedback? We are sending questionnaires and we are having data. See, I have my, register, my room full of, my whole shelf full of feedback. But that's a level 1. That doesn't mean that, you're doing feedback, whether you are acting on that feedback or not. Whether you actually want to improve through a feedback or not, that's something for me is very important. Another thing, in the morning, from the quality education, I can't see that's the ones who is there. He said, in the quality education, what is happening now with all those private institutions is, of course, Delhi University is against that right now, is accreditation. Accreditation, will it only solve problem? Will it solve a problem to make us quality? Say, if I have a A++ certificate, that means I am the best? It may not be the case because we are talking about democratizing so that every student who is a diverse student also is getting education. But again, I do not mean by that a student from village X and a student from a village or from a city Y should have different levels of education, because if I'm giving a certificate or if I'm giving a degree, if I'm giving anything, all those courses should be of the same quality. There we have not to become that, see, he's different, his background is this, his background is that. Today we are talking about higher education. It's an online portal and I'm very proud of it, and the media also has given me an ample coverage on that and applauded it. But I'm very happy that the corporate is taking care of that, and even my students responded. I have to take care of 30,000 odd students in the final year, and 8,000 students got registered on their own. That means so many students are interested in e-learning mode. But again, there was in the morning we talked with the Meritrack presenter. I would have liked to ask him a question at that time. He was not there. We also have a core competence unit in a central placement cell. But my problem out there is Meritrack also came, then NASCOM also came. NASCOM also is doing the Meritrack. It cost, they offered us 650 rupees per student they'll charge us. My question is, in case if they'll charge us 650 rupees for that core competence mapping, all those tools, all those technologies with issue. In Delhi University, we only charge a fees of rupees 15 a month. How can I ask a student to give me 650 rupees or whatever? These technologies, we also have to give a session on finding how it can make an inroad in a larger student base where we want students to actually benefit. The companies like, Meritrack came with, if I'm not mistaken, so many companies have visited. I have been able to place students with a salary package of 8,20,000 and even, 15 lakh just simple undergraduates and a different diverse range. And you have different people who are there, like Meritrack, and then you realize NDPL came, just a last example I'll give you. NDPL came, NDPL said, Seema, I said, I have 8,000 students registered with me. They said, Seema, but we have actually, I would like to tell you, say Meritrack or any such agency is doing it, and I'm giving them 1,200 rupees per student. So you please shortlist out of that on your own and give me only 200 students. So at times it may happen that the purpose may not be defeated because of the cost. That's something which I want all of us to also remember. Then there is another thing that I would just like to end, as now Mike has also given me, my voice is loud because I'm a teacher. E-learning doesn't automatically produce a world-class university. E-learning doesn't automatically produce a world-class university, but a world-class university does produce e-learning. Thank you.
I'll sum up probably in the end if there's time.
Thank you so much. My job has always been very difficult. Right now in the session, I'm the tail ender, and professionally also my job is very difficult and very challenging, but exciting at the same time, of providing employment and employment opportunities to students, millions of them, who unfortunately lack employability skills. So I'll just touch upon 2 points very quickly so that you all are not stressed out. And that is just to give a fill-in of the democratic initiatives that we have taken with a mission to provide job opportunities to our students, which I think the earlier speakers from the university have probably missed out, or maybe they deliberately left it for me. And that is that we are trying to democratize educational system in our university with the end objective of providing jobs and job opportunities through our common service centers and through various tie-ups that we've had with various corporates. The most recent one has been a tie-up with NII Sparta, wherein we are supposed to be training about 250,000 youth who belong to poor families of about 5 states on BPO and IT skills. And then the companies are going to be taking them up for about 3 to 6 months. And after that, if they find them suitable, then they would give them permanent jobs. This is one initiative which is democratizing, reaching out to the unreached and the disadvantaged one for the end objective, which is placement and job opportunities. Then we have tied up with SEHEJ, which again through common service centers, which are technology enabled, also to train them for employment. And the third one is, of course, through the telecenters, through the telecenter.org. I think we are the nodal point for the entire world for these common service centers through telecenter. And lastly, what I'd like to tell you is that we are trying to virtualize our placement process through a job portal, wherein again we are democratizing because any student can apply for it, and wherein we are having a dashboard for the recruiters as well as for the students, free of cost. And we plan to give them virtual counseling, career counseling and guidance, and also talk to them about the various employability issues and the kind of skill sets that the different domains in the industry require to get today. It's been a very difficult task for me to convince my students that if they are not getting jobs, it's not because they belong to a distance university, because most of them come and say that they are not allowed to go and appear for an interview with a TCS or a Wipro or Infosys. But I tell them that that's not the reason. The reason is that you all have to scale up, or you have to upgrade your communication skills, and you have to have undergo some grooming and personality development classes. So for that, to that extent, we've just tied up with 1 or 2 institutions, and we will be giving our students skill training on soft skills, employable skills, as well as on certain domain-specific skills, and try to push up their possibilities and opportunities for jobs. So that's our way of democratizing education to reach the unreached, as well as to provide them job opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Neeta. When Dr. Seema mentioned that university and e-learning go together to make it a great university, reminded me of what Aristotle once said. He said, what? A university in a city? He said, why? A city is a university. I think that aptly sums up whether it's a university or whether it's e-learning, they go bonding to each other. Dr. Neeta definitely spoke about placements in a very ubiquitous way, which is all prevalent, all pervasive, that it needs to be done. I still think that there is no denying the fact that ICT plays a very important role for distance education, because here we are on the session for that. Right? There are challenges. Yes, there used to be challenges of bandwidth. I think that's been largely overcome. You would always have an excuse bandwidth. Then it comes now to endorsing it from the industry. I think many universities with initiatives of their own have got organizations to endorse it, organizations to get involved. They've got advisory groups from the universities when they write up the new curriculum. And I think that's the way forward, which will help employment and placement for students. But I still think the biggest challenge, people don't accept it, right? But I think it's a mindset. And I think if you can overcome that mindset, any other challenge can get overcome. Thank you, and if there are any questions and permissible by the organizers, we'll take them. Thanks, Sheena.
We would allow 2 questions.
We kept to the Indian standard time, not Indian stretchable time.
Good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Dr. Surendra Kumar. You know, in India, we cannot escape from distance learning, because if we want to convert our population as our human capital, this is the only way left. And of course, there is going to be a lot more applications of ICT in this particular mode of learning. But for certain professions, unless we make this distance learning very interactive, say for some profession, it may not be accepted as Professor Bakshi told. You know, learning a subject is not enough. For some of the profession, especially for teaching profession, how it is being taught also becomes very important. And in distance learning, this second aspect is not yet fully included. So I will definitely will be very happy if some of the technocrats work on these aspects and make use of ICT to give this aspect of learning process in distance learning. Another important thing is that is regarding subjects of engineering and technology. So for that also, making use of virtual experiments and virtual laboratories, lot more is to be done in ICT. Otherwise, definitely, we cannot escape from the use of ICT for making our population, converting them into human capital that is the need of our country, need of the hour. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we conclude this session, I would request Mr. Thimaiya to hand over the mementos to our panelists. Mementos will be here in some time. Yeah. Any more questions meanwhile? If anybody has any questions? Mr. Thimaiya, please. I would request Mr. Dipanjan Banerjee to hand over the memento to Mr. Thimaiya. Thank you, sir. Thank you, panelists.